Welcome to Immigration Insider with your host, Attorney John Nicelli. This podcast is an educational forum on how to deal with complex aspects of immigration and pitfalls to avoid. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Now here's the host of Immigration Insider, Attorney John Nicelli.
Hi, everyone. This is John Nicelli. I'm an immigration lawyer in New York City for many, many years, 43 years and almost 44 already. And I'm here to talk to you today about some current immigration-related events affecting many people here in the United States. So today I'll talk about some of the issues that are going on at the border and what was recently done to correct some of the problems there, which I have my issues with. So on June 4th of this year, just last week, the President Biden signed what you call a proclamation on securing the border. And what it was is basically some new rules in effect at the border. Now, the new rules are kind of change things a little bit, but in my opinion will be shot down probably in the federal court lawsuit in the future due to many, many problems that I see with it. One of the main problems, before I get into the whole crux of the issues, I want to talk about one of the limitations that is in this proclamation. And the limitation is that the Border Patrol will close down the border if 2,500 people enter the United States within 1 week. It's my understanding of it. So if 2,500 people enter, they close down the border for a period of time until they'll probably close it down, possibly even a week or so. And then they'll start all over again to see how many people come in the following week. So that in and of itself is a big problem because 2,500 number happens to be a lot of people. Because if you figure it out, 2,500 people a week that are coming in, that would be 130,000 people per year. And if you times that by 5 years, that's approximately 650,000 people. So it all sounds good in theory that if 25 people come in, well, we're just going to shut down the border and then people are going to stop coming. But people will never stop coming to this country because it's the greatest country in the world. They have to have other remedies to solve the problem. One of the problems I see with it, just very simply, is that what if only 2,400 people come in the week? That means the border stays open. So if 2,400 people come in every week, that means at the end of the year, that's 124,800 people. And in 5 years, that's 624,000 without the border being closed down. Now, to me, if you do the math, it doesn't make any sense. So as I've said in the past, there's only one way that would basically work as far as the abuse of the asylum system. Because what's happening now is the coyotes or the smugglers or whoever's involved, what they do is they tell people, go to the United States, apply for asylum, tell the Border Patrol people that you're afraid to go back to your country for whatever reasons, and that will be your ticket in. So as a result of that, over 2 million people have entered the United States in the last 2 years. That's an awful lot of people. And what's happening is that many of these people, we don't even know where they are. Some have been deported, some are currently in proceedings, and some just disappeared into the woodwork. So that in itself is a problem, because there's too many people coming. And the problem is that when people come in and when the politicians get involved, that makes things even worse. Because what's happened in the last year or so is that the Texas governor decided that he was going to send people to what they call sanctuary cities, to places like New York City and Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. and whatever. So, and then what happened when the politicians get involved, they say, oh, these people are coming in, we have to give them housing. So they end up giving them free housing. They give them money to live on. They try to give them They put them in hotels, in apartments, free food, free medical care, basically free everything. Well, that's not sustainable and never was. Now that all these people have come, it's in the millions, the cities can't handle it anymore. And now they're asking the federal government, please help because we can't do this anymore. Well, common sense would tell you that if anybody would have sat down to try to figure it out, it never made sense from the beginning. So that's another problem we're dealing with right now. And it's been overburdening to the cities. It's overburdening to the health system. It's overburdening to the school systems. It's just one massive mistake that has taken place by allowing these people to come in. Now, there's a very simple way to stop this. If Congress would stop sitting there doing nothing and they would act for the benefit of the United States. And the way you stop the abuse of the asylum system, which is basically what it is you have Congress change the law, and the law should read that if you genuinely fear of being persecuted in your country for whatever the reason is, and it obviously a legitimate asylum reason, then you should be able to file for asylum in the country you live in, the country you pass through, or basically any country in the world. We have embassies and consulates throughout the world, in all the different hemispheres of the world. There is no reason why anyone from any country cannot go to any U.S. embassy or any U.S. consulate and say, listen, I am fearful of living in this country for these reasons. The United States authorities could easily set up a system where they can do a electronic setup where they'll actually do they'll use WebEx because the government uses WebEx. They do WebEx and do televideo calls. So you can do a televideo call with an asylum officer in the United States, no matter where in the world or what mountaintop you may be on. It doesn't matter. You go to the consulate, wherever you are, go to that consulate, do the video call at the U.S. Embassy, and have them decide if you have a legitimate claim. If they feel you have a legitimate claim, they can grant you asylum, and the United States Embassy can actually, through the State Department, will actually issue a visa as an asylee to enter the United States. Now, let's say that system is in place. Well, there has to be repercussions as well. If you enter the United States without going through that system where you file for asylum outside the United States, you are ineligible ever to file for asylum, and you should be ineligible for any benefit because you're breaking the law by entering the United States. That's the way it should be. Unfortunately, Congress hasn't done anything. If you think of it, it would save billions of dollars. It would put the smugglers out of business. It would stop people being victims of crimes because they're making that dangerous trek across the border. In addition, there's many people that have actually died from heat stroke crossing the border. I've had clients that have done that and have actually died and never came back. It's a big, 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 big problem, okay? And it all could be avoided if you tell people you want asylum, you file at the embassy or consulate anywhere in the world, but not at the United States border. You do not file U.S. border. That should definitely be prohibited. So one of the things that they put in this legislation was that, this proclamation actually, was that they believed that this is going to effectively control the border. As I've said already, the numbers alone, you can never control the border if you're going to allow up to 2,500 people come in. That's number one. Second thing is that the interest in is basically for safety and for management operations and the cost involved. That all makes sense. But the problem is the way you want to do it doesn't make any sense. So what they're doing now is they're enforcing a law called expedited removal. Now, expedited removal means that if you get caught within 100 miles of the border, the United States Border Patrol can just ship you right out and send you back to wherever you came from, basically in an expedited fashion, and then you'll be barred for 5 years from entering the United States. So expedited removal has been on the books for many years, but unfortunately, it hasn't been enforced much because, for whatever political reasons, they haven't enforced it. But yet Congress put that law in the books many years ago in the 1990s. So now what the government did through this proclamation is they created this, what you call a recent arrivals docket. So a recent arrivals docket means that if you come to the United States and you apply for asylum at the border, which I'm dead against, then you have a right to have a hearing with an immigration judge. So now you're going to go on this recent arrivals docket. So that means you're going to see an immigration judge as quickly as possible. Well, I had a case today where a person came to the United States in May of 24, only last month, and the earliest hearing date she has is October 2025. Over a year and a half just to have her first hearing for an immigration judge. And then what happens is that the next hearing for a judge, probably months or even years later, and then after that, they'll deny the case. It'll probably be denied, like 90% of them are. They'll be deported, and they'll file an appeal. The appeal will take another year or two. So from the time the person arrived to the time there's a final order based on a denial of an appeal from the Board of Immigration Appeals, you're probably talking like 4 to 5 years at the minimum. So they want to try to stop that from happening by having people do hearings sooner. So as I said, person came in May, and all of a sudden, they don't have a hearing until October, so of 2025. So now I don't know how that's going to change. We have a number of cases that are in the system for a number of years already. And now what the courts have been doing is asking us to take, if we want to take the case off the calendar, so they can make room for these new arrivals to do their hearings. But even if they do them sooner, the problem is a judge has to hear the case. They still have to have a right to appeal. The appeals take long. And if they lose an appeal, they always have the right to go to a higher court. Here in New York, and it's a Second Circuit. In New Jersey, it's a Third Circuit, a federal court. That also takes months and years. So what happens is people gain a lot of time staying here 4 or 5 years before they actually have the final order of removal. By that time, immigration has the right to go pick them up and ship them out and enforce the order. But the ICE people, the Immigration Customs Enforcement people, are the people who actually arrest you and proceed to start the deportation proceeding or removal proceeding. They are overwhelmed. They are overwhelmed with thousands upon thousands of cases. Each officer here in New York has probably 8 or 9 or 10,000 cases assigned to one officer. It's impossible for one person to be taking care of all these cases. It's insanity. But this is what system has been created by allowing these people come in and allowing the drug dealers, who are now the people smugglers, to allow them to profit at the expense of the United States government. That's basically what's happened. And the only way you're going to stop the abuse is to have the people only file outside the United States and not be allowed to file at the U.S. border. The unfortunate part about the whole situation is that there are many people in the world who do have legitimate fears of returning to their home countries. And they may have very good asylum claims. There are few, but there are some. And those people are ones that are really suffering because they get mixed up in the mix here. And the judges have heard every story under the sun. And when it comes to asylum hearings, they basically question many, many things because they want to verify that what they're saying is true, or what documents they have are valid. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And it's very, very difficult for an immigration judge to make decisions on these cases because they can believe the person has a legitimate case, but the person has nothing to back it up. And it's very, very difficult for them. And it's a problem all around. It really is a problem. Now, one of the other things that the government did is they changed the standard for being granted asylum now. So they've made it a little more difficult, and they changed the standard to mean that in order to be granted asylum, or at least have an asylum hearing, or have a credible fear interview with an asylum officer, they want you to have what they call that you would have a significant possibility that you can establish an asylum claim in the United States. Significant possibility, reasonable possibility, you can call it anything you want. The problem is it's the same problem. It's most people who come in don't have all the evidence that they need to support their claim. And they're trying to uh, limit people from filing asylum by telling them, well, you have to have all the evidence to support your claim. I don't think that's going to stand up in federal court. I'm sure there's going to be a lawsuit pretty soon if there wasn't one filed already. And I can assure you it's not good. I don't think the result will be good. And until Congress acts and stops doing nothing, nothing is going to happen and nothing's going to change. And there's always ways around the system. But if Congress would put some stringent laws in effect, I think it will work. Another problem that we have is that, with this expedited removal means that you're deported basically at the border or port of entry. And once you're deported and ordered removed, you can't come back for 5 years. The problem is that in and of itself is not a deterrent, because many people who come from very poor countries where they may make $1 a day or $4 an hour or something like that, and they come to the United States and they can work on a farm, for example, or doing just about anything at the minimum wage, that's far more than they'd ever make in their home country. So even if you deported this person who may be unskilled or uneducated, they feel that, okay, send me back. I'll go back to, say, Mexico or South America or anywhere in the world, and I'll try to make my way back somehow because I have to feed my family. It's more important to feed my family than it is to be deported. So I'll take my chances. If I get deported a second time, I don't really care. I'll keep getting deported until they get caught. So there has to be some other laws on the books to make it more stringent. We have laws on the books right now that if you enter the United States illegally, you could be criminally prosecuted. But unfortunately, those laws are rarely enforced by the United States government. Sometimes they are. Most of the time, when you get charged with entering the country illegally, you'll probably be sentenced to maybe a week, 30 days, 20 days, a month, 2 months, maybe something like that. It's usually fairly insignificant. It's rare that somebody gets 6 months or a year. But there has to be severe consequences. Maybe they can increase those consequences or have some other remedy. But it's what we have on the books right now is definitely not working. They said until Congress acts, nothing's going to change. They're also increasing the amount of financial awards they're going to give people. So if you turn in or you cooperate that about a smuggler who is involved in bringing people to the United States, they're going to increase the amount of money they will give you if you're a cooperating witness and give you some financial award. So that is an incentive to some people. Many people are fearful of turning in any of the smugglers because a lot of them are involved with organized crime and they fear for their lives. So in theory, it works. I'm not sure how well it'll work in practice because of the legitimate fears that people really have. And there's also, as I said, there's immigration-related prosecutions at the border, but they're few and far between. And the reason why is because if they would prosecute everybody that came into the United States, we need jail space, which we don't have. The courts are backlogged, so they're tied up. So it doesn't work on large scale. It works on a small scale. And that's the reason why it's very rarely enforced. And because it's rarely enforced, people know it doesn't matter. Just keep crossing the border. If you get caught, they send you back. And so on. They go to jail for a couple of days. Even if that happens, that's fine. As I said, if they're feeding their family and they're very poor, they're going to keep doing it. So there has to be some changes. And they have to talk to people who know about immigration. Congress, unfortunately, the congressmen and senators in Congress, when it comes to certain things, like especially with immigration, they think they know everything, okay? The fact is they know very little. And what happens is that if you want to solve a problem, I always say, ask the people that work in the field. Ask the prosecutors. Ask the immigration lawyers. Ask the ICE people. Ask the Border Patrol people. Ask the immigration judges. Ask the detention people. Ask the medical personnel who take care of these people that come in. Put everybody in the same room. Get opinions. That's how you solve a problem. And until you get everybody's thoughts of how to do things best, nothing will ever change. If once politics gets involved, which it is right now, because the presidential election is like the height of the political agendas of many of these candidates, you absolutely cannot get politics involved. We're in this to help the American people, the United States of America, not to help yourself and fill your pocket. That's what has to change. We need term limits on Congress, and then when they know they're not going to be there the rest of their life, maybe they'll start working, because that's really a disgrace what's going on. So that's my thoughts for today. I mean, it's very unfortunate we are in this situation right now. As I said, millions have crossed the border. There's been probably 1 million people that have already been ordered deported by immigration judges. I doubt even half of those people have actually left the country. That's another big expense to actually transport people who have been deported. We have ICE Air, which is an actual airline that deports people, carries the deportees out of the United States. But they're limited in function. They don't go to every country in the world because of the costs that are involved. And it's a big, big problem. So the way you stop the problem is you stop the people from coming to begin with. And you change the laws to have more working visas. If people had a working visa that they can apply for, they would gladly apply for a working visa as long as they had permission to travel. So we have what they call an H-2 visa, which is a H-2A and H-2B visas, which are temporary work visas. And the H-2A visas are farm worker visas, basically. They work the A means agriculture. So they come in, they work on farms for, seasonal work. They'll work, the whole summer, for example, and then they'll go back to their country for the winter and come back in the summer. That program works perfectly. The problem is it's only a limited number of visas. So we have 1 million farm workers with like 60,000 visas available for farm workers. It's ridiculous. So it makes no sense. And that's what has to change. Congress has to allocate more visas in working categories, and you won't have people breaking the law by coming illegally. They can easily come legally if there was a means for them to do that. But when you limit the means, people take other ways of getting here, and that's what's going on. And it's not good. So hopefully things will change. I have faith in the American system, and I just hope to God that our representatives will agree with the president, whoever that president may be, sit with people who work in the field, and make laws that make sense. That's what they need to do. And that's my thoughts for today. I hope to see you next week, and hopefully we'll have a good topic to speak about then. Thank you.
You've been tuning into Immigration Insider with your host, Attorney John Nicelli. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.